The Cats have defeated the Bombers at Alphabet Stadium 15-19-109 to 10-5-65, and we're going to take this as a bit of a win, Bomber fans. It's a sad state of affairs when it gets to that, but it was a pretty good performance by the Dons. We're going to talk about it in this video. Well, like most of you listening to this video, I was dreading this match. But, you know, when we crawled within 20 points in the third quarter, it just released something in me that I hadn't felt for a few weeks. That sort of spark where you could actually get excited about something. And I didn't, think that we were going to go on to win at that point. But all of a sudden, it was actually a possibility, even though it was an extremely unlikely one. And I just felt excited for the first time in a long time. And look, given that we lost to them by 90 points at the MCG, many of us were expecting it would have been at least that. But the fact that we fought it out and matched them, particularly in the second half, was pretty encouraging. And I thought we out-tackled them at various points. We just didn't quite have the class to go with them. And really, where was it won? Well, obviously Geelong just being the more talented team. But really, I thought in the first quarter, the first half in particular, the turnover game, I'm always on about how turnovers are the key to winning football games, and we were just kicking it to them, it seemed, and they were getting so many turnovers. Their big body players, Blixavs and these sort of players, just seem to get these intercept possessions, and it's just so frustrating sometimes, especially when you have good players turning the ball over, and that was something that we needed to sort out. I felt as well in the first half we were going backwards. And I don't think it's so much a deliberate thing. I think it's what happens when you are out of sync and you've got a lot of players that haven't played together and you're lacking a bit of confidence. You tend to instinctively take the easy option. And I think it does need to sort of be coached into them a little bit more. That it's okay to play with dare. It's not like, what's the worst thing that can happen? The worst thing that happen is that you make a mistake. The opposition might get the ball back, but at least you've gained a lot of meterage. There was a stat that I was listening to on the radio. Mick Malthouse was talking about it. The possessions in the game were relatively even at the time, but Geelong was about 150 metres ahead on metres gained. And that's just kind of reflective of a team that kind of lacks confidence. But I thought that my feeling on confidence as well is that it kind of comes and goes. And I reckon with effort and tackling, you can actually breed confidence. And you could feel it on the ground in the third quarter as the effort went our way. We got a few lucky decisions go our way as well. And you can actually see the players lift a bit of a leg and gain a little bit of confidence and you could see them playing that way. So it just goes to show you that, those things can be rectified, and they can be rectified in game as well. It's something that they'll work on in the off season, but it actually can be worked out in game. You put the effort in and things start to go your way and it can create a bit of a snowball effect. At least that's how I see it anyway. I don't know how you guys felt watching it on TV, or did any of you also go to the game? Let me know in the comments. If you like this channel, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. About 60% of you watching aren't subscribed. It takes 1 second to do so and doesn't cost any money, so I'd really appreciate it if you could do it. So yeah, I enjoyed this match more than I thought I would. I think part of it was playing down there at a different venue. I've been to like hundreds and hundreds of games, about 500 or so, and I reckon about 99% of them over the last 20 years have just been at two, most of them have been at two venues, Marvel and the MCG. So it's that, unique kind of fresh feeling of going to a different venue that, you just feel like there's something a bit different about this. So I kind of enjoyed going down there and watching the Bombers put in a pretty good performance. And the highlight, well, there's a couple. I think Archie Roberts played a great game, 33 possessions. Probably over-possessed it a little bit. I don't know if he was that effective with them, but I thought he was our best player. And Liam McMahon as well kicked 4 goals. I was sitting in front of Liam McMahon's family, particularly his grandfather, and they were going absolutely berserk when he kicked the goal. So I turned around and asked him, look, you people must be related to Liam, and they confirmed that they were. So that was pretty good. Dermy was sitting 2 seats behind me as well, so that was always good, sitting amongst the friends and families there of the Bomber players. And it was great to see McMahon kick those 4 goals at a really hostile venue. So that's about 30 matches out of 31 now when you account VFL and AFL that he's kicked 2 or more goals. The only time he hasn't was last week against the Swans, where he got subbed out. So I've definitely been on the Liam McMahon bandwagon. I've been one of the ones saying that we need to keep him and he shouldn't be delisted. Some other people have said that he's 50-50. And we'll see. I don't know what the answer is. But I just think he gives us a great deal of variety in that forward line because he's a different player to Caddy and he's a different player to May. He's a bit more of a traditional mark and lead full forward with an accurate kick as opposed to the crash and bash Archie May and the athletic Caddy. And I think he gives us something different. I had him listed as one of the 13 players that were untradeable. Some might disagree, but other people have him in the possibly the list category. I think we've got to keep him. I just think I'd hate to see him go to another club and dominate and forge a really successful AFL career. I think he is a must keep. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. So how did this game transpire? Well, like pretty much every Essendon Geelong game over the last 3 or 4 years, it was kind of over in the first quarter. And this is the thing that's probably frustrated me more about Essendon Geelong games than anything else. It's the start. Yes, we fought it out. That's great. Yes, we gave ourselves a 1% chance in the third quarter when we kicked 4 straight goals. But like every single Essendon Geelong game, they kicked the first 4 goals and it was over basically 20 minutes after it begun. And it was Neil who kicked 3 straight goals in the first. Well, he kicked the first 3 goals. Maybe we're a bit too Jeremy Cameron conscious. There was always a danger that's going to happen, that there's so much focus on Jeremy Cameron kicking a bag because he wants to get that 100 goals before the season's end. And Shannon Neal bobs up and kicks 3. Dempsey kicked a goal, and then McMahon kicked his first goal to end the first quarter, and it was 4-1. Quarter 2, McMahon kicked another goal, but Cameron kicked a couple, and Close also kicked a goal, but we went in 7-2 at halftime. I thought the effort was there. I just thought that I was hoping we weren't going to get blown away, and that's why I was so happy with the third quarter. To win the third quarter and actually keep the actual game alive, as in, they still hadn't actually put us away, was really impressive, especially because Blixarves kicked the first goal of the third quarter. McMahon got his third goal, and he was the only goal scorer for Essendon until halfway through the third quarter. And then we kicked 4 straight goals. Merritt, Guelphy, McMahon, and Gresham all got goals. And all of a sudden, we gave ourselves a bit of a sniff. But not surprisingly, the Cats steadied with Myers and Manor kicking goals. And then the fourth quarter, it was kind of a goal-for-goal quarter. It ended up being 4-3. We kicked a couple of goals with McGrath kicking a nice snap. Dersmer as well, goal from close in, before Geelong kicked 4 of the last 5. And they were looking for Jeremy Cameron in the end there. And look, I thought Laverde did well on Cameron. He kicked 4 goals, 5, so it could have been more. But really, he kicked the last 2 goals of the game. And those last 2 goals of the game, they were looking for him every time they went forward. So I'm not saying you don't count them, but you can kind of have a bit of an asterisk there because they were making sure he got a bit of a look at it. I sort of look at it that when the game was still alive, he'd only kicked 2 goals. So I thought that's a pretty good effort from Laverde, and a pretty good effort as well from Newen playing on Stengel. He kept Stengel goalless after keeping Papley to just 1 goal. Now, admittedly, Stengel kicked 3 behinds, but at the end of the day, he didn't kick a goal. So I'd say that's a win to Newen, given that Geelong had 34 scoring shots and Stengel actually couldn't get on the board for a goal. So how did some of our players go? Well, I thought it was a pretty good effort from Zach Merritt. Look, Merritt was getting tagged by Mullen, but he still had 27 possessions. So if anyone's been following, Mullen's been one of the best taggers in the AFL. So for Merritt to get 27 possessions, get off the leash a bit, and he had 10 tackles. So, that's a pretty good game from Merritt. I thought, he and Archie Roberts were probably our 2 best players. I thought Merritt was probably a bit more effective. Roberts got more of the ball. Roberts got, 33 possessions. There was one disastrous turnover. He started at half back, but just the fact that he just was able to get his hands on the ball so much, he was a very noticeable player. It wouldn't surprise me if he picks up maybe a Brownlow vote in that particular game. McGrath as well, who I thought was pretty good. 23 possessions, 7 marks, plus 5 tackles, kicked a goal, switched to the midfield in the third quarter. I'd like to see him play a bit more midfield next year. Mason Redman, also 24 possessions, and he had 22 kicks out of those 24 possessions. Conceded 3 free kicks against, unfortunately, playing in defence on Brad Close. Dylan Shield, 23 possessions, 6 marks plus 2 tackles, playing on the ball, had a reasonable game, 76 champion data points. Laverde, look, I don't think you criticise him too much. Big job on Cameron, kept him to 2 goals until the very end of the game when they were looking for him. like I was saying, so nothing really to criticise him there. Durham, a little bit quieter for him, playing central midfield, 18 possessions. Xavier Dersma was solid. He had 14 possessions, including 10 kicks, 8 marks. He started on a wing. Goldstein certainly had a better game than what he had last week. He was pretty quiet last week, Goldstein. Monstered by Grundy. I thought he was much better. He had the 23 hitouts, and he actually got a bit of the ball as well. He had 12 handballs, which is unusual for Todd, but that's the way you go. Angus Clark as well, 17 possessions, played a serviceable game without being outstanding. Jackson Pryor, I'm growing on Pryor. At the start of the season, I was thinking, look, there's no way he'll have a contract for next year. But the more he plays, the more I'm impressed. Whilst he's not outstanding, I just think he's the kind of player that does his job. And I can't think of a disastrous mistake that he's made. Let me know if you guys agree with this. Like, you know, you sort of think of players that, that was a terrible turnover by the player X or a bad thing from player Y. I can't think of a bad mistake Pryor's made over the last couple of weeks that really stood out. He just seems to be doing a pretty serviceable job down there in the back line. So I think he'll get a contract for next year. I haven't been blown away by him or anything like that, but I think he's been pretty good. McMahon, like I said, probably his best game for Essendon in the short time he's been there. 4 goals, 1. The great thing about McMahon is that he's efficient. He doesn't get a lot of the ball, but he makes use of it when he gets it. Only the 8 kicks, but kicked 4 goals, 1. You know, you'd love that level of efficiency from most players. Peter Wright kicked a goal, did a couple of nice things without dominating. Guelphy, I thought, had a pretty good game. The stats don't really show it, but I thought he was an impact player. I thought the possessions that he got, and I thought the chains of possession or the chains of play that he was involved in tended to be high impact possessions. He only had the 9 possessions and kicked 1 goal, but I thought it was better than that. Maybe I'm missing something from being at the ground, and let me know if you guys, agree with that or don't agree. If you're watching on TV, you might have picked up something different. I thought he was pretty good. Kako spent a little bit of time in the midfield. Played a bit of small forward as well. I think he is a player that is capable of playing in the midfield, not full time, but I like a horses for courses type of coaching approach where you can put players into the midfield for a half or a quarter and take them out of there. That's why I love versatility. So I'd love to see him spend a little bit more time in there. Perkins did what Perkins always does. He had 15 possessions, 5 kicks, 10 handballs. Just didn't do enough. Wasn't terrible. Is he doing enough to get another shot at it next year with the Bombers? Maybe, but it's going to be touch and go whether he is traded. Nguyen had the 5 possessions but kept Stengel goalless, so you can't complain with that. May didn't have a huge impact on the game because he went off with an ankle injury. I thought when he was out there he was good and competed hard. It turns out that from what I was hearing on the radio coming on the way home, he'll probably be okay, so we hope that's all right. Hobbs had no real impact on the game, just the 10 possessions. Lawal got subbed off. It wasn't related to that nasty neck injury, well, what looked like a neck injury when Dylan Shield pushed a Geelong player into someone and Lawal ended up being the casualty out of that. He wasn't subbed off because of that. He came back on the ground, but because he was playing sore and didn't have a huge impact, he ended up coming off. Blackiston was just doing a serviceable job. He tried as hard as he could. Unfortunately, he was on Neil and he was well beaten. But look, like I said, you can't have everybody dominating. And Menzies came on as the substitute and only had the 2 possessions. So all in all, I thought it was a pretty reasonable team effort from the boys. So what about the main stats out of the game? Well, the disposals are fairly even. Geelong just had the 18 more disposals for the match. I mean, it was very, very different to last week when there was a huge statistical discrepancy between Essendon and the Swans. That wasn't the case at all. Geelong only had 5 more inside 50s, 52 to 47, and at one point in the last quarter, we actually nudged ahead in that particular stat. Stoppages, Geelong led the clearances 35 to 26, and also the stoppage clearances 21 to 16. It wasn't a total domination, but it was just enough that their class shone through. I don't think it was a match where the stats tell a hell of a lot. When I was watching it just from the stands, it was more just Geelong's bigger-bodied players. And this is something I've always noticed when Geelong play Essendon. They just look bigger and stronger. They look that 10 to 15% bigger. And that extra little bit of class is the difference in the game. It wasn't really anything to do with effort or stoppage clearances in particular. I think it was just that, an AFL standard team against a team that has a lot of, at the moment, VFL standard players who are trying to improve. Possessions, pretty even. Contested possessions, Geelong just led it by 15, and uncontested possessions were pretty even as well. Geelong led the the time in possession 42% to 39. Marks inside 50. Geelong, well, this was probably a key number. Geelong had 21 marks inside 50 to 11. That pretty much equates to the final score in the end. Those extra 10 marks inside 50, given that most of them are shots on goal, is probably the 7-goal difference in the match. And tackles inside 50, Geelong 16 to 14. We out-tackled them actually 58 to 66 overall, which was a pretty good effort. So what do you guys think of the match? I thought it was a pretty good effort myself. I enjoyed going down there more than I thought. Kind of reminds me of the days when you used to go to Windy Hill and then have to go to other grounds on the other weeks. And you kind of enjoyed going to the other grounds. For those of you old enough to remember, let me know if you sort of agree with that or if you have memories of that. These days, it's so much different when you're only at the 2 grounds. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with Marvel and the MCG. They're great grounds, but there's something interesting back in the day that you'd go to, you go to Cardinia Park and then you'd go to, the Western Oval, and then you'd go to, well, I never went to Arden Street. That was gone by the time I got older. But, but you go to, different grounds, and it always was, interesting and unique to do that, which is something we don't have anymore. So I kind of enjoyed it going down there. So if you guys get a chance and we play down there again, buy a ticket and go down there, all right? It's you'll enjoy it, I promise you. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and subscribe to this channel. Have a great day, everybody. And as always, go Bombers.